This is part number 3. So again, pull out your handouts and let's dive into the scriptures. Hey guys, we have again spent the last 2 weeks into this brand new series called Exodus because, as you know, Mr. Christian Bale came back again to Hollywood and gave us the introduction of what Hollywood perceives as the biblical narrative of Exodus. Now, I have to be fair to the conversation today, because the last thing that I want you to hear from me, and I hope it does not happen, but if it does, I don't know. I don't know how to fix this. I don't want you to hear from me that I am condemning what Hollywood is doing, but I do have to make you aware of 2 primary elements that happened through the opening of this movie. Number 1, the first element in a movie like this, which is supposed to be based on biblical narrative, is that most of these movies, and this is no exception, they omit elements of the Bible in the movie. Personally, by listening to the interviews of the directors and even the characters, by the way, it's just very interesting that every one of those characters are white. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? Anyways, and everybody speaks with this French accent. I'm just like, these guys are highly educated. Ooh. Anyways, the first thing is the omission of things. This movie is going to bring you multiple sceneries, multiple elements of the biblical narrative of Exodus that they're going to just plain and simple omit. The other thing is that this movie is going to give you elements that they're going to add to the biblical narrative. Now, with that in mind, a couple of things, just a couple of examples that I can give you, top of my head. Number 1, Moses is portrayed through Mr. Christian Bale as a warrior, as a general. It's interesting to see that in the biblical narrative, in the Bible, one of the key elements throughout the narrative, and I'll tell you why, just a minute, is the issue of Moses' staff, or what eventually becomes, after chapter 3, becomes the rod of God. Everybody knows what I'm talking about? So you gotta go back into the history of the movie, because of the Bible, because the movie begins, watch this, the movie begins when Moses is basically 40 years of age. And because of that, Moses is going to spend the first 40 years as the prince of Egypt. At age 40, as you know, kills an Egyptian, tries to separate a fight between 2 Hebrews, and the whole thing ends up by him fleeing from Egypt as a persecuted man. And he's going to spend the next 40 years, okay, so now he's age 80, he's going to spend it in the wilderness by literally leading a flock that not even belongs to him, belongs to his father-in-law of sheep. He's a shepherd. So, when you look at the movie has a twist where a very small percentage, extremely small percentage, brings forth the staff, the stick, the rod. Everything in the movie is about a sword. Because what happens is, as I told you last time, what this specific movie or this specific plot, and based on what the director places before you at the end of the movie, he is dedicating the movie to his recently deceased brother, who is also, or was also, a movie maker, and he committed suicide. So what he's going to do through the movie, he's going to create this tension, and the whole movie is between Moses and Pharaoh. I personally believe that's not the case of the biblical narrative. One of the things that he is going to tell you, the director, in open interviews, is going to tell you that he doesn't believe, the director of the movie, he doesn't believe that Exodus is a historical event. He doesn't believe that. So that should tell you something. Number 2, he is going to try, and I think it's funny what he does in the movie, good, everything is well done, but this is funny, because he's going to try to bring the logical explanation of the supernatural in the movie. So you guys remember the story? He's going to go through 10 plagues for the people of God to be released and move towards the promised land. Well, he is going to have 2 characters in the movie that they're going to explain or again, give the logical reasoning why these things are happening. The movie doesn't say this, but I think what they are, these characters, they are like seers. A seer in the Bible is like a prophet. In the Old Testament, those are the guys that interpret dreams. You remember Joseph? Remember Daniel? Those are seers. They interpret dreams. So these two characters, which I say two because the first one, because when you fail on your interpretations in this time in history, the prize was capital punishment. So the first one doesn't make it to the end of the movie. The second one comes into place and he tries to, again, explain the reason why, the supernatural is happening. And it's interesting because since he doesn't believe neither that Exodus is an actual event, historical event, and he doesn't believe in the supernatural, through the movie he's going to say, the disturbing section of the movie that just to me disturbs me is the departure of the sea. Because he's going to attribute that departure of the sea through an earthquake. And again, I don't have time to go into the historicity, and I don't want to ruin the movie for you, which I probably have already. But, even Christian Bale, when he was interviewed in one of the programs, one of the TV programs, he made the statement that Moses, listen to what he said. He said, Moses is the most barbarian man I have ever met. Now, once again, Moses is portrayed as a general, as a warrior. I don't believe the Bible describes Moses as that, in a sense. I don't see that in the scriptures at all. But again, so some of the elements. Now, let me bring to you one more, and before I do this one, let me make a little statement on this. My concern has always been with movies like this, and this is why we're spending, this month of December dissecting this information, is because my concern is not that people, directors, will add or omit biblical content from movies like this. My concern is that the Church of Jesus may not know what they are. That's my concern. In other words, I'm not concerned when people practice same-sex marriage if they're not followers of Jesus. My concern is when Christians get engaged into. Are you following me on this? And I know that sounds judgmental, but all that I'm trying to tell you is this. Stop expecting non-Christians to behave like Christians. Are you getting my point on that one? It's expected. But what do you expect? I want you to be bothered when Christians behave like non-Christians. That's when I want you to really get that, what we call holy discontentment. Now, here's the last of the elements that I want to bring into the movie. If you've seen the movie, you have seen this face. Anybody knows who this little 11-year-old boy is in the movie? Who is he? God. God. This is God in the movie. Because what's happening in the movie, this is the one single element that I just believe it got ruined. It ruined the movie, and that's what I want to focus our attention this morning. You look at your handout, and if you look at the title, it's Exodus, God and King. I'm reading from your handout. The title says, The Glory of God. Because what he's going to forsake, and again, I expect this from people like in Hollywood, they're going to forsake that the real issue of the movie, the whole point of Exodus, the whole point of Old Testament, the whole point of the New Testament, the whole point of life is the glory of God. That's the whole point. So what's going to happen is that he's not going to make any emphasis. He's not going to bring anything into the movie about the character of God being revealed to humanity. And I'm bringing this character of God brought into humanity because as you remember the story, we read this from last week, Exodus chapter 3, beginning on verse 1. Now Moses, he is 80 years old. Please listen. Like if Moses was in the valley, he is supposed to be retired. He's supposed to have a life of an 80-year-old person. And what he's doing, he's tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law. So think about it, picture this. And if you guys come back Wednesday to our Christmas Eve service at 5:30, I'm going to go in detail of the function of shepherds as receivers and recipients, vessels of the glory of God. I'll go into the Christmas narrative, so come back. But all that I want to say to you is this. You went from chapter 1 and chapter 2 being the prince of Egypt, the man in command, the man with a lot of power, to now being a wanderer in the wilderness, taking care of dumb animals. The crazy thing is that this is not even his business, it's his father-in-law's business. How much of a loser can you be? He's like, dude, you're the highest of intelligent, highly educated, and you are... Anyways, it's crazy. He is a prince of Midian, and he, Moses, led the flock to the far side of the wilderness. It was there where he came to Horeb, which is the mountain of God. Listen to the narrative, verse 2. Right there and then, in that place, if you have a Bible, and if you love to underline your Bible, this is a section you're going to underline. The angel of the Lord. Can you say it with me? The angel of the Lord. Say it one more time. The angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames. And these flames were flames of fire. And this fire was from within a bush. Moses saw this whole scenario. Though the bush was on fire, it will not burn up. Now, let me make a quick parenthesis before I go to verse 3 and just get my cards on the table. I am approaching this message, I'm approaching this narrative with the understanding that the focal point of the story is not a piece of tree or a plant that is not being consumed by fire. The focal point is the fire, which implies, watch this, my assumption, my understanding of the Bible is that the fire is not being fueled from the plant. I don't believe the fire needs the plant to be fire. Alright, here we go. Let's try again. The focal point is the presence of God. That God decided to reveal himself through fire. And he is there, he is present. And because it's not, again, this bush is not burning up, listen how it is. Verse 3. So Moses thought to himself, I will go over and see this strange sight. And why is it that the bush is not being burned up? Handouts, here we go, let's go. Moses helped us to understand that when it comes to the glory of God, the presence of God, it's always about the revelation of God. In other words, it is him, it is God, not Moses. It is God. I just explained to you that Moses is on a 40-year losing journey. He used to be somebody 40 years ago, but he became a murderer, he became an outcast, he became, here we go, the shepherd boy in the wilderness, in a foreign land, away from family, away from what he knew, rejected by his own, and in the middle of being at the lowest of the lowest of the lowest, God shows up. See, it was beautiful to see our young ladies gathered together this Friday for a time of prayer, celebration, Bible study, fellowship. It was great. 40 plus girls showed up. And we're here to spend the night. Moses was not going through one of those church services when he saw this. Are you following this? Moses is not coming from a pastor's conference and he saw this manifestation. It was in the common of life, in the mundane, in the daily activities that he is doing that God shows up. I think that's a little principle we got to remind ourselves, because some of us, we are really thinking about getting serious on 2015, but we have been very responsible with 2014. Huh? Come on. Am I speaking to somebody right now? See, some of you singles are really eager to find the one, but you just really suck as a single person. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? See, what you need to do, if you're going to continue this detrimental mindset and lifestyle of a single person, for the love of God, stay single. Just don't get married. Because you're going to cost me as a pastor, and a bunch of pastors, a lot of unnecessary counseling. He's like, are you kidding me? They don't mind counseling, but I'd rather counsel non-Christians, because non-Christians, they don't know any better. See what I'm saying? Why would I expect a different behavior? Anyhow, I just got that thing out of my system. It's just in a different way. Bottom line, here we go. There's the point of God revealing himself. Now, why is this important? I'm glad you asked. I'm so glad you asked. The revelation that God is bringing is a huge reminder, like everything else, that God is speaking to Moses. God revealing himself to Moses. It's exactly the same underground theme, underground principle as your salvation. Please look at me. What the point of this intervention is not It's Moses. It's not even the tree, the bush burning. You know what the point is? It's God fulfilling a promise. Because see, every time God shows up, it's always to point towards something or someone. So let me translate that into your context. If you are a follower of Jesus, your salvation is not so you can right now try your very best, die at age 85, we move the steps from here so we can fit your casket, have a funeral service that says that you were a Christian and you go to heaven. That's not why you're a Christian. And some of you, that's how you approach Christianity. See, if you're a Christian, it's because God saved you, watch this, to save many. That's why you're a Christian. The implication of that is that if many are not being saved, listen, if many are not being drawn to the presence of God because of your lifestyle, guess what's happening? You know what's happening? Many are being confused because of your lifestyle. You have become a stumbling block if you're not walking into the presence of God, understanding that Him revealing Himself to you is always for the sake of others. Now, the perfect example of this is a conversation that God is going to have hundreds of years prior with a man by the name of Abraham. And God speaks to Abraham in chapter 12 and the following chapters. And basically, you know the narrative, the story basically says, Abraham, I'm choosing you because I want you to have a child, even though you have an old self and an old, well, ladies are never old, barren lady. Let's just use the word barren lady. She was barren. And you're going to have a child, and from this child, I'm going to give you a family. From this family, I'm going to give you a nation. And through this nation, I'm going to give you literally a Savior that will redeem the world eventually. Abraham looks at him and says, sounds really good. It's cool. And you got something else for me. Oh, you don't believe me? And Abraham comes just with this honest conversation and basically says this. Watch this. Abraham says, hey, I want to believe you. I really want to believe you what you're saying, but how can I trust you? I mean, I'm at the place where intellectually I know what I'm supposed to do, but emotionally I'm just, man. Anybody there? It's like you know exactly what you're supposed to do, but in your mind you're still fighting the argument, and obviously in your mind you always win the argument. Right? You never lose in your mind. So Abraham has this conversation, and God comes back to him and says, this is why you can trust me. Here we go. In Genesis chapter 15, verse 17. When the sun had set, and darkness had fallen, a smoking fire pot with a blazing torch appeared and passed between the pieces. This is why you can trust me, says the Lord to Abraham, after everything I give you. Now, God has spoke to him from chapter 12, chapter 13, chapter 14, because if you remember the story, Abraham said yes, partially, went and lay down with the servant by the name of Hagar, she brought forth a child by the name of Ishmael, and then comes Isaac, the promised one. So from this kind of a deviation of original plan, you're going to have Ishmael, and you bring the Arabs, you bring the religious movement called Islam. Through Isaac, you bring this new trend called eventually Judaism. Bottom line, look at me, bottom line, from this conversation, and what I'm about to explain to you is the birth of the three major religions of the world. Islam, Judaism, and eventually Christianity. Everybody tracking this? I don't have time to go into details, but here's what I want to say to you. The reason why God speaks to Abraham and says, through this smoking fire pot with a blazing torch,